上当百年，欺世大官。
Hello everyone, today we give you the second half of the episode of how the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, deceived American government. Before we start, please subscribe our program if you have not done so. On July 22nd, the US delegation arrived in Yan'an, and Mao put aside many activities to meet them multiple times, forming teams to build a circle of friends in an attempt to brainwash them. The party history newsletter edited by the Central Party History Research Office of the CCP disclosed in 1983 part of Mao's conversation at that time. Mao said, "Every American soldier in China should be a living advertisement for democracy, and he should talk about democracy to every Chinese people he meets. American officials should talk about democracy to Chinese officials. In short, the Chinese respect your American ideals of democracy." Mao first praised America like this, but then he changed the tone of speech. Here, Mao carefully aligned his interest with the Americans to gain America's support. The American people are good friends of the Chinese people, and the goal of our party is to overthrow the dictatorial Kuomintang reactionaries and to establish an American-style democracy so that the people of the country can enjoy the happiness that democracy brings. I believe that when the Chinese people struggle for democracy, the American people will support us. We can see Mao's deceiving skills. CCP used such skills to make politically correct statements that bound the fate of CCP with Chinese people. You can also understand why the US didn't eliminate the CCP. Now let's show you some more such examples. Zhou Enlai, the second most skillful cheater in the CCP, said in 1944, "There are three prerequisites we consider most important for the implementation of constitutional government. First, the guarantee of democratic freedom for the people. Second, the opening of party ban. And third, the implementation of local autonomy. There are many freedoms and rights of the people, but the freedom that the people of the country most urgently need at present is the freedom of personal residence, the freedom of assembly and association, and the freedom of speech and publication." Can you believe it was from the second leader of the CCP? Here is another statement. The imperial scribes of the Kuomintang reactionaries said China cannot engage in democracy. For once they do, there will be chaos. This is a lie told by the reactionaries to consolidate their rule. According to the characteristics of the Chinese people, after the implementation of democracy, China will not only be chaotic, but will eventually become rich and strong, surpassing the old democratic countries such as Britain and the United States. This is still what the top party media, Xinhua Daily, said in 1945, according to the Communist Party's current principle of maintaining stability. This is simply an official denunciation to incite subversion. The irony is apparent. In today's China, the Communist Party is using the exact excuse to refute those who want democracy, saying that the Chinese people cannot engage in democracy or chaos will arise. According to the Communist Party's current principle of maintaining stability, what Xinhua Daily said in 1945 is simply inciting subversion. Only a fascist would brutally suppress the democratic demands of the people, and only a fascist would stifle the freedom of the people and all their liberties. These are not the words of any democracy activist, but those of Mao in 1946. Take a listen to this. It is common sense that in a democratic country, the sovereignty should be in the hands of the people. If a country that claims to be democratic and the sovereignty is not in the hands of the people, this is never the right track. It can only be considered a perversion. It is not a democratic country. How can we achieve democracy without ending party rule and implementing universal suffrage, empower people with their sovereign rights? These were the editorial words of the Xinhua Daily on September 27, 1945. Now listen to another incitement from Zhou Enlai in 1946. Zhang Qun, the Kuomintang Minister of Propaganda, said the Chinese people should be patriotic and owe allegiance to President Chiang. Yes, the Chinese people should be patriotic, but love the country that belongs to the people, not a country that belongs to a small regiment of reactionaries. When the reactionaries run out of road, they will incite extreme xenophobia to divert attention and ease the crisis of ruling. Look at this statement. It looks as if Zhou was talking about today's CCP, where a small group of people controls the entire nation, and the people not distinguishing between loving the country and loving the party. For those who are interested to learn more of these ridiculous examples, you can search online for the book The Herald of History, a solemn commitment half a century ago, compiled by Mr. Xiao Shu, a commentator of the Southern Weekend, which is based entirely on the editorial of the CCP's Xinhua Daily and the remarks of the top leaders of the CCP back then. It is absolutely traceable. The CCP, who had seized power, certainly did not want to acknowledge or keep such a promise, and perhaps even more so, did not want people to know that such a promise ever existed. And the book was strictly banned as soon as it was published. It is most hilarious that the CCP's speech, which was not banned by the Kuomintang back then, was banned by the Communist Party itself decades later. Ladies and gentlemen, after reading these remarks, I believe many of you will be shocked and greatly impressed. Who would have thought that the CCP was so in love with democracy and freedom back then? If we don't know CCP's nature and what they have been doing to Chinese people, we would praise the CCP's concept of democracy back then. As viewers of our program all know, the Kuomintang government at that time was far more tolerant compared to today's CCP. Otherwise, how could the CCP run newspapers and publishing houses in the Kuomintang-governed regions? Can Kuomintang be allowed to run newspapers in the mainland China today? Sadly, the reports of Western journalists and the deception of the CCP made the US government at that time fail to recognize the essence of the CCP and instead was disillusioned by its lip service democracy, and thus asked Chiang to unite with the CCP to resist Japanese invasion when dealing with China affairs, as if the CCP's failure to fight Japan was the result of Chiang's policy. In addition to forcing Chiang Kai-shek to make peace deal with the CCP, the United States also provided the CCP with armament. What was even more distressing was that immediately after the anti-Japanese war was over, on August 25, 1945, it was the U.S. military aircraft that expeditiously flight Deng Xiaoping, Lin Biao, Liu Bocheng, Chen Yi, Nie Rongzhen, and other CCP generals from Yan'an to northeast and North China frontline 1 day earlier than the U.S. airlifted the Kuomintang advanced personnel. This seemingly unintended mistake contributed to the defeat of Kuomintang government in the Civil War. How could they have thought that democracy, freedom, and human rights were just like a bubble for these elegant gangsters of the CCP? It was not until December 1946, after the CCP used the case of so-called rape of Shen Cong, a girl from Peking University, by American servicemen to start a massive anti-American movement. Then the United States government woke up from the dream and realized that they had made a big mistake, but unfortunately it was too late to give full support to the nationalist army. The US was thus fooled by CCP. But hopefully the previous lesson will be a warning to today's American government. That's the end of the story. Perhaps the CCP did not expect that they got the power eventually. As you have seen in our program, once seizing the power, the CCP immediately changed its manner, no longer talked about the American-style democracy, no longer mentioned the freedom of expression, association, democratic elections promised to the people. If Chinese people try to remind CCP their promise, they will deny and suppress the people who talk about it. Poor Chinese people thus have been enslaved by the CCP for decades. Today's China is in desperate situation. CCP is dreaming of enslaving Chinese people for thousands of years. How long do you think such nightmare can last? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your support. Before you leave, please do not hesitate to subscribe, share, and like our channel. See you next time.